I'm ready.
Go home, guys.
Yeah, so hi, I went
Oh
through your
no,
present.
it's Samriti and Srushti. I'm so sorry. Go on.
Yeah, so I went through a presentation. I was really amazed with the tools which you use throughout your project, like for how different project you use different type of tool. So with that, we have come up with some questions. So like my first question to you is, so you use like various different types of tools for different projects. So how do you decide upon which is the perfect tool for like a specific project? Like, you know, for this project, I need think with this tool will be work the best and not the other tools.
Um, okay, good question. um, we don't have like a palette of tools actually. Maybe I like to think we do, but then I don't think it's true actually. um, so it really has to come from the project. So whatever is, I think the first thing to do would be to define the objective. Um, what is it that we want out of it, right? And I think that working from there is where you get to what you want to use, like the kind of approach and the kind of tools that you want to use have to be tailored to that. So I think it's important to first decide what is the objective that you are looking for, and so the objective could be like if I had to break it down, would be like goals, but at the same time, it's not just goals; it's also about outcomes. Like there's a goal, but then you need sort of a benchmarking for that, and that should be like an outcome, right? Like so, um, I want a certain outcome out of the exercise that I'm doing. So I need to design something. I need to design a tool that will get me that outcome as well, right? And the outcome is aligned with the goal. So it's literally in some sense breaking it down into very clear understanding of the project. It's like the goal, which let's call it vision, for like as a better word. So there is a certain vision, but the vision has an outcome as well, like which is used to check if you have reached that vision. So the tool actually derives from the outcome. So yeah, it's a lot of it needs to have some iteration. What we may do is like, considering we've done this for quite some time, we may use something that's already there, but then that could just be a starting point. Like we're also not, doing something like, that whole thing about like there's really no new idea anymore. Outcome will by nature generate a whole new tool that we use for that particular project. So that's how the tools keep growing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I got 1 point then.
Okay. So we have another question talking more about like how we interact with people. Like, could you give us like some insight into like some critical key points that you have learned throughout like your years of engaging with people?
um, you need an anchor. I think that would be the first thing. Somebody who is like your portal um, to the community or the site, right? And this person, identifying that person is actually key. And you can, do a connector person or that entity. Uh, and then things become a little easier for you to break down, because it can be very complex, and even with a portal also sometimes it can be very complex, but at least it's kind of like a crutch, you have someone to fall back on, uh, and to also bounce off certain ideas, like, right, and this person needs to be someone who is uh, an insider, somebody who the community trusts, uh, and this person, it's also important to identify this person, because then they could also double up as a local champion later, because I also say that you have to identify a local champion who will speak speak for the project on your behalf. So there is a fair amount of time that you have to invest in doing that, because otherwise it could fall flat if you don't have. These could be multiple also, because sometimes it may be that you don't have one person that sort of like serves as a portal. It could be different sets of people that you reach um, through these different individuals, right? So uh, if you had to break it down by process, then I would say first you need a clear demographic understanding. And this could be something very, as simple as just starting with census data or something, right? I mean, somewhere you need to start, right? Or you, I mean, if you have a demographic understanding, you can also are you referring to informing? Like, is
I'm talking about like when you have a project in hand and you go to the site, you see what the people are doing, how they live, you learn from them. But then when it comes to implementing something for them, there's sometimes a gap in between in this process.
but why is there a gap? I mean, if you've actually engaged and if you've learned, there shouldn't be a gap, right? Like, what is this gap? I'm not getting what this gap could be like. Do you have an example? Can you
No, this was just a common question that we had as a group.
okay?
Like
But the
maybe
purpose
when
of
it comes to even studios, like we know the studio brief, we learn about things, and
Hmm.
then we know that we want to do something. But then when it comes to implementing it, that's not how we want it to be. Or maybe there's some, like there's a break in your thought process, and you don't know how to go about things or something like that.
oh, so there is a gap between what you've conceptualized and what is the response then in
Hmm.
that case? I
Yes.
would read it
Yes.
like that. It means that um, it means you didn't do your homework properly. Why is there a gap if you've actually like worked through this, right? I mean, and that's the whole point of working through it, right? It's also to minimize that gap, is because you're doing something that everyone is on board with, and and uh, and sort of that collective decision is the strength of the solution, in terms of its ease of implementation as well as ease of adoption, right? Two things you need, right? You need it to be made easily, and you also need it to be adopted. Like, one thing is to make it, another thing is also for it to be adopted, right? Like, maybe you made something and then they're like, after it's made, they're like, blah, and don't want this. Then there was some gap in clearly understanding needs and aspirations, and putting them together to arrive at a design response that is acceptable to everyone. Like, if like your creative response to what you have identified as, like needs and aspirations, and as well as constraints also, uh, is what should be manifest as a solution, right? So it's actually a fine balance between all of that. And if you manage to get that fine balance, then you should have like a winner on site. You shouldn't have any more issues. um, I don't know, that's the way I would see it.
Srishti, you're on mute.
I said that answers my question.
So more homework then.
Yes.
Uh, my next question to you is that you arrange like as a tool of engagement, you arrange like walks, and you even asked in the one on the presentation I saw you asked the people to measure, draw their settlement, and do something like that. So how do you ensure that people participate in that? Because like if you ask them to maybe measure draw the settlement, they might not participate in that. Maybe
Mm.
they're like, no, we don't want to do this much. So how do you ensure that people do participate?
Yeah, so see, again, you can't force something, right? Like and the reason I said you need that portal is so you get a sense of what's going on, what is the pulse, to what extent is the engagement, and therefore you find something that works in terms of an engagement as well. Like, because you can't say, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to go and distribute pamphlets, and then you can't say, why is nobody doing anything about it? I distributed pamphlets, like, or I put out loudspeakers and I made, spoke about the project, but I've not received any response. It's like, it's also, in some sense, understanding the pulse and seeing what would work. Sometimes it requires a lot of effort. Like sometimes you might have to just do a door to door thing, like if nothing else is working, like so it's in many ways it's easy for you, like, to find that. I said it's important to invest some time in finding those portals. uh, that also reduces the amount of effort that you need to put in, right? Like, so even if you find one person, like if you have to reach 100, and if you found like five who can reach five, that still reduces the quantum of work from your side to a little bit, like, I mean, whatever. And that helps, in like, just in so many ways. So yeah, I think it's it kind of keeps going back to where you invest your time. And there could be a lot of hit or miss, but it has to be uh, what do you say, like, given out in doses. So that the one with the measure drawing that you're referring to was easy, because we had the Maila Housing Trust folks who were already working with those slums. So it was reached through their SHG workers, and so there was a direct contact. So it was all it needed was for them to go and pull in a few people and say, come, we're going to do this, because they had already been engaging with them for several different kinds of work. So like it was only a matter of teaching them how to do it. So there was only the teaching part that we had to do in that case. The other part was taken care of by somebody else.
Yeah. Srishti, will you go with the next question?
There are like a various voices during a participatory project. Like you have different stakeholders, different people involved in
I
the
can't
project.
hear you very well.
I'll
Am I
continue with
audible?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's a little better. Yeah, better, better.
So there are like various voices in a participatory project. Like you held so many events where people have different view and different things they want in. So how do you make sure that you do, like, you take a step in such a way that everyone is pleased with that step, that everyone's ideas are incorporated in the step which you take in forward?
One thing is it helps if everyone feels like their voice has been heard. Uh, so a lot of times those meetings and sort of prior engagements are to make sure that they feel like their voices have been heard. Also, we don't never do a like a large meeting first. The large meeting is usually the end, which brings everybody together. Like, we've engaged separately with all the different users, and in whatever way that we needed to. And then only after that we have like one where everyone comes together. So this is like, um, so the you can never get consensus from 100 people at the same time. You'll have to like work at it like in smaller chunks, and then you know have them come together. uh, it's a it's a slow process, but I mean it can get difficult also. But I think it's also your job to sell it, right? Like, I mean, it's also um, in some sense you're reading of the place and what you want to do there. Like, there is, you may have like, 50 ideas, but your ideas need to be calibrated to what is the reality over there as well. And it's about finding the kind of right fit intervention that is needed. And it could be something small also, like it could be something small to start building consensus also. If you feel like there could be some tension, then it's useful to scale down what you want to do. Like, and that's why I said it, there's a vision which is the larger, I want this place to be this, or this place can be this, and then there are the outcomes. And the how you get to those is, you can have different scales of interventions. So there is a sense of tension, then you can start small. You don't need to sell the bigger idea right away. You can sell it in smaller parts. Uh, it's also testing for you, because maybe what you feel is the vision or the big idea is not the correct idea for that place. So in that way, testing out some smaller intervention is also a way to for you to also recalibrate what you feel you want this place to become.
Yeah.
And as
Other,
sometimes the smaller interventions, it's easy to involve them also. Like for instance, the measure drawing part is just, let's going back to that same example. It's a very simple thing, but it involves them in their own neighborhood, right? Like, so it could be something as simple as that also. And it gives them a flavor of the bigger picture when you do something like that.
yeah. My
Yeah.
next question. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, one of the very interesting things that I really liked from the presentation that you gave was using art as a medium to initiate change. So in this like process of like using art for like all these things, like could you please share like some pros and cons, or like something good or something bad that you have experienced in this process?
So it actually helps. I think. I mean, not by design, but I think if I look back on all of those projects where we did use it as a medium, I think it was more in case where the audience was very, very broad. Like, it was like a citywide audience. And so we kind of use that as a least common denominator that would be appealing as a tool for everyone. It's because our tools are a little more, um, I won't say grounded, but they're a little more traditional when we're dealing with a finite site or community. but when it's like a citywide audience, or it's like we're doing citywide mappings, I think it kind of lends itself very nicely, simply because art just has such a like a general wider appeal, and the the colors and the vibrancy and whatever it is that it lends itself to, like, has a universal appeal even across all age groups. So just in retrospect, I think the installations have worked for cases where we had to engage without knowing who we're going to engage with. And these are like really quick things, like it was like, okay, we needed something out of it, so I'm gonna do this sort of art installation, and and if anything, just the vibrancy of it attracts people to come to participate, and that's what we want, right? Like in those cases, the goal was actually like to have as much participation, to draw as much participation from as wide an audience as possible and across all age groups. So yeah, maybe we've just been unknowingly using it like that. um, yeah, because literally can't think of another, like, a case where we used it. Maybe we should explore it, but we can't think of a case where we used it like as a very in a very traditional context to it, like where we're looking at engaging with a community that is like finite, or within a geography, or within a sort of demographic. But yeah, I mean, that question made me think.
So the next question is, what is the biggest hurdle you have faced, like, to get these social projects implemented? Like, what are the hurdles you face while getting the projects implemented?
Funding. It is a no-brainer.
That was my next question. Like, where did you get your fundings from?
Yeah, I think the question should be how creatively you can find means of finding funds.
Yeah, that is one. And then the other thing, and I think we've used this a lot more, is how do you work with very less resources? Like, minimize the expenses for maximum impact, like, and that is also a very interesting challenge, in my opinion. But yeah, it's I think, and this is the difficult part, right? Like, you can still, the engagement and the planning and stuff is still fine, like, and so much of that we've also done pro bono. But the problem, or sort of the pain arises only when it's about doing what was the outcome, like, or getting to that the vision. And that is a very slow process. It's like several projects where we've, like, are either in pause, or like they haven't moved further on because wasn't able to continue through, like, also these are like holistic visions that we're talking about, right? Like, so where it's like in some sense, these things never end, only these projects, because of that, because you're always like, you want to go back, and it's just hit pause button, you want to go back, and when something comes up, and you want to go back and do a little bit more on it. So yeah, I think one way to deal with it is like, again, incrementally planning it out. So and the scale of interventions, work with what you have, don't overpromise, don't overcommit. Those are all very important, because it leads to losing trust, and do you say reliability, and all of that. So yeah, it's important, like, even as students, actually, like, when you go, and most of the times, when we're working with especially marginalized communities, uh, it's important to not treat them like some sort of like lab, no, like that we're going there and it's for an academic project, and you nevertheless don't want to treat it like a lab. And it's important to clarify those things, and be sensitive to what you propose to do there, that is well within your limits.
So, sorry, if I may interrupt, I have a follow-up question. So generally, when, of course, a lot of the things like you were saying are done pro bono. I wanted to understand, because Sebastian and I face this a lot. How do you get people to value why that is important to the city? Because that is something that we struggle, like why should someone invest in doing this for the city? Sometimes it's like, why bother? So how do you deal with that with your projects?
I think over time we have uh, uh, stopped trying to do that, actually, especially like, I mean, when you're dealing with top down, uh, because it's like a switch, okay, like if it's on means it's on, otherwise it's not. Okay, like in that case, this is not like building consensus and working together, which is a lot easier, like when you look at it bottom up. So I think in mostly we stopped doing that. Like what we do is like break it down into very very small things, and like ask if they can do this, like it's only this much, like can you just do this? Like like we don't ask you to do this, we just ask you to do this, like and yeah, and then guilting them into not doing this. That's something we're trying right now in a project. So far it seems like it's working.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, because it's like this project that we're working on, and there's like these drain pipes that just like come out and drain, and we're just like, since your job to put it in, and connect it to the network, like just that little thing, just do that. So yeah, I'll let you know when when it's done. But yeah, so far they've been telling us that, okay, we'll do it. Like it's come to that. They're like they've come to site, they've seen it, they understand it, and they're like, okay, we will do it. So yeah, it's just, I think we're it's something new we're trying this.
Or like we reach the point where you pester them till they do it.
Yeah, we're
Essentially.
doing that as well. Yeah, pester them for that little, like it's only so much, like just like come and do. It's like,
Sorry, Samriti. I give it back to you.
Yeah, so I have like one more question. So like while working with people, there is a lot to learn from them as well. So like is there a sometime where you have designed something for them, and there might be a chance that they don't agree with what your design is like. So how do you do that? Like you like, ask them to that this is the best option for you, or you take in their inputs and change your design. Like how do you go about that?
it has to be co-design, no? So you can do it, you can take the first step, nothing wrong with that. So you can take something and show it to them, and then it's your responsibility to explain it in a way that is not biased, to your own design, uh, and you need to I mean, if possible, prototype it, if the scale permits, prototype it and ask them if they would, if it's working for them. If not, um, yeah, you have to outline very clearly the pros and cons, and it's useful for your own process itself, to refine it, because it's not like you just made it and it's like the perfect thing in the world. So it's for your own sake, for the refinement as well. and you have to be able to deconstruct what you have done in a way that you can, ask the right questions, and always look at the full cycle. Okay, it's not just the implementation, but it's also the post implementation, right? Like, so there is the maintenance part, like the longevity part, and in some cases it may be scaling up or replication or whatever it is, that there is an afterlife to the design also, right? Like, so how does that afterlife pan out is also something that you should keep in mind when you are evaluating it. um, so your questions need to be uh, need to cover the entire spectrum. Yeah, and by all means, please go and change it after that.
Yeah, I'm done with my question. If Shrishti have you something or others have something they can ask.
I just wanted to ask you, Vidya, what are you guys working on right now?
I can't hear you very well.
I I was asking, what are you working on right now?
Right now,
Hmm.
so we are doing this project in this low-income settlement. It's called Cities for Play. So this is the one where we're looking to activate residual spaces, or unbuilt pockets in low-income settlements through play. So that was the whole idea of reimagining their commons through the eyes of the children. So that is like, we're looking to go in for implementation like third week of March. So it's been a challenge because we've not had very much community engagement because of the pandemic. We started this last March, and we had a whole series of community engagement activities planned out. Like, we wanted to meet all the children and their parents and their grandparents and everything. And we haven't been able to meet very many of them. But the only, I guess, what was easy was it was play, and nobody's like saying no to playing. uh, and we've got like a whole master plan, but we're not. Again, we have a limited amount of funding that came through a grant, and so we can implement in some pockets. So we kind of also worked out the budgeting for it, and we've broken out the whole thing. There are like some 31 pockets that can be activated, but we put a price tag on all of them, depending on what can go in all of them, and then we rationed out the money, and then it's like, so we can now activate like two pockets. So we're going ahead and gonna start doing that. So that's where I went. Like, there's one place where these drain pipes come and like, like inundate the plane, and we're just like, fix those pipes, and then we can do it. So yeah, that's going on. Otherwise, we're just wrapping up a couple of projects. Like, we did a capacity building exercise for municipal engineers in Coimbatore, where we taught them how to design streets. Again, keeping all the user groups in mind. Like, don't go and design them like as if they were meant only for cars. So it was a whole exercise in teaching them how to first map all the different user groups on the street, and then do like a role play exercise to understand what it feels like to be that person on the street. And yeah, and then literally teaching them how to draw, like, and do street sections, measure the street, map everything there, come back, draw it, and then we also made them test their designs with a tactical urbanism like trial run. So what they did in the room, on the very last day, we went out and just put some chalk markings, and we did that, and then they were like, "Yeah, it's working." So yeah, we finished that. We're actually like in the process of wrapping up like a lot of the pandemic projects.
So I just have one more question. Then I don't know if anybody else has one. So one of the topics that we've been discussing throughout the semester is this whole, I mean, partly this whole situation of funding and how do you, incorporate finances into the architectural urban agenda, keeping in mind that it's not just about, relying on the, the public sector, the government, whatever, but also incorporating other strategies where you can have, other influx of capital into the project. Now, we know that you work with with both sides. I think that that's something that is very interesting about Urban Design Collective. Now, from your experience, what do you think is the sort of a little bit like in the same fashion that Sam was, asking about pros and cons in relation to the public sector vis-a-vis the private sector? What, in your expertise and in your experience, is the sort of advantages and disadvantages of working with each?
Um, so with uh, let's start with public. It's just really, I mean, everything is difficult actually, but I think public sector funding is it's like this whole process of having to justify it, so like there's another project that we're is on our table is this it's called a Museum of Possibilities, which we're working with the Disability Rights Alliance. So it's actually a space, and this is like part of several initiatives that we're doing with the Disability Rights Alliance. Like one of them is actually, also looking at a beach pathway. Like we have like second longest beach in Chennai, but I mean, it's completely inaccessible. The waters are completely inaccessible to anybody on a wheelchair. Um, so we've been, and this is a project we've been working on for 4 years actually. Like we've made designs for a pathway that goes takes you to closer to the waters, so you person in a wheelchair can enjoy the waves. Um, it's like first they said we needed CRZ clearance because it's on the beach, even though we were not like sort of violating anything. But then they said we needed an NOC, like because we've only used wood, we've not done any foundation. There's no cement, concrete, nothing. Like as per the CRZ norms, we're not violating anything. But they nevertheless needed an NOC, and that took like some, I don't know, some 3 years or whatever, like, and and then we got the clearance in January, last January, and then we were all set to start construction, and then lockdown happened, and then now it's like come back to we don't have funding because we've exhausted all the funding for Corona. it's like it's like, God, you made us wait 3 years for the CRZ clearance, and finally it's here. And we just like went full speed and finished all the tender drawings and everything and gave it to them. And then lockdown happened, and then it's like so it's now again in this weird limbo, right? And now they're like, oh, we have to wait for the next state budget, and and our elections are coming in April, and it's like only after the elections. So it's like this whole, you know, yeah, like I don't know how much longer, but just getting them to be interested in something like this that caters to a very small percentage of beneficiaries, at least in their opinion, is just so difficult, but yeah, we've just been pursuing it, like, and then in between it, they said they got some smart city funding to do this, and then now they're like, that's got lapsed, and so we don't have that. So now we're like, we have to get funding from the state, and the state will only happen after the election. It's like this whole circle that it keeps going around, like, so that is that. And then this museum is directly with the state, in fact, and they've got the funding. This is the other funny part, right? Like, so they've got the money and it's in their bank account, but we can't spend it because they've got some heads under which we need to spend it, and the heads are so vague, and so when we did a whole, estimate, design and cost estimate, they're like, we can't match these items in your cost estimate rows to the heads that we have for the funding. Like, so tomorrow when they come for an audit, they'll be like, why did you spend that money on this? I'm like, it's a museum. It just doesn't come out of nothing. So this is like, there's money in the bank, but it's not coming out. So we're now having to like alter the way we write the specifications so that it doesn't look off from the heads that they have. So it's literally like a game of semantics. We're just like rewriting the whole thing so that the words don't give away what it is that we're doing. It's like, I don't know, it's that so there's like so many like crazies that we have to go through to just work with public funding, like whether it's there or not there. Like in both cases it's like ironically difficult. And the other side is like, I mean, there are other expectations. So there's like client expectations, and and which may not necessarily align with community expectations, right? For instance, this lake project, I think it must have been in my presentation. I'm not able to recall which one you guys are watching and referring to, but this lake project that we did was actually funded by Tata Consultancy Services, TCS. And they were only interested in fixing the lake, right? Whereas our entire community engagement was for programming what happens around the lake in the, in the Bund area and just immediately outside of the lake, because we felt that if you just fix the lake, then, it's not easy to get the community invested in it, because in the first place it was already trashed and whatever went into disrepair. So if you need to rebuild that connection, we felt we needed to do it through programming, right? But then the client were not interested in the programming part. All they wanted to do was to fix the lake, and they wanted to fix the lake because they were extracting water from that lake. It's like so yeah, so they paid for it. They cost a couple of crores actually. So they funded that and they paid for it. The lake is beautifully restored, and it's like it's brimming with water, and all the biodiversity part and all like is done. Like these islands and the plantation has been done. So hopefully, like, I mean, birds and all sorts of flora fauna would have inhabited it, but it's still disconnected from the people because there's nothing done on the programming aspect. And we know exactly what is needed because that's what we kind of came up with through our entire community engagement over there. They asked for some vocational training skills, especially for the women, because a lot of them are just at home, and they really find it difficult to find gainful employment, and there's very less transportation options for them to go out and seek employment and then come back. So they wanted like to see if there could be some skills training and some sort of small cottage industries that could be set up right there itself. Like, so we had a clear direction of where this was waiting on funding for doing that part, because from the client side they were not interested in doing that. Yeah, it's everything is difficult. What the hell?
But to add to that, of course, there is the funding, which is private and public, but also how has the experience been working with, say, other organizations like NGO who help in the on-ground implementation? So how does that collaboration between, say, designers and NGOs or other organizations work?
I've always found it to be you know um, a fruitful collaboration. Like for instance, the one in Ranchi, which I mentioned, was with Mahila Housing Trust, and but also I will point out that it's challenging because sometimes NGOs also have their own kind of um, agendas as, and which are also in many ways like governed by their funders. So they have to speak the same language as their funder, and they have to sort of adhere very strictly to the outcomes. It's very rare that you have an NGO that has like an endowment. It's not an endowment, right? Like most of them are project related funding. So in which case, you just need to be very careful before starting as to how you are aligning, because sometimes things have gone wrong even for us. Like, it's like somewhere along the way, we're not, they're overly governed by what their funders want. And then, we are trying to say that that's not exactly what is required on the ground. And, so there may be a certain, you know, face off at that point. So yeah, I think it's important to understand what are the limitations from their side as well. Like, but you know, that said, like they're definitely great partners to work with, and many times, they have those portals to the communities that are like make our job a lot more easier, because then we can focus more on the creative process, and in designing the engagement tools, or even whatever it is that we're looking at as interventions. And uh, the part of the inroads into the community is already like taken care of by them. So there is some sort of like trade-off with working with such partners. um, yeah, I think I just I would just say requires a little bit of caution, and that's just purely from experience. Like sometimes it can backfire. Usually I find that it helps if there's like some sort of short engagement, like we come in for a very specific role that is like tuned to our expertise, and like in a way we like you look at it as a contribution to the project, like in a way that it enhances the project within the goals set. So we don't do the visioning in that case. The visioning is done by them and by their funders, by that chain of sequence. But it's about a certain value addition that we can do within that, like, and that could be equally rewarding actually.
Um,
I think, yeah, we can take one last question. Go for it, Akash.
um, so I wanted to ask that I've seen that a lot of practices in this domain of participatory design, they work with volunteers a lot for different stages of it. So maybe for the production, and then sometimes even to engage with the community and carry out some kind of survey process and all of that. And I'm not sure if you, I mean, you also, your practice also does, but I've just always thought that how do you in case of volunteers, like how do you um, resolve the accountability part, like how do at a certain, to a certain extent, how do you maybe formalize this process or not, or what are the steps one should keep in mind when working with volunteers as a practice?
So that's actually a really good question. We have like I mean, I think we've been lucky. There's been like a pool of people that are just sort of gravitating around us. Like, so many times if I need like one or two people, I just call up and be like, hey, you want to come like do this, like, and they'll come. In which case it's easy because they're already tuned to the way we're working, and that just that's fine. But in case of an open call, it requires training. So we've always done like a proper training session, where uh, before they are let out onto the for field work. So yeah, we've done this in a couple of projects as well. Like it's very formal, round of training in the tasks that, and of course it requires a lot of planning. Like you have to break it down properly, and there's like which ones can you give out which are error proof. Like you have to be very careful when you're giving out tasks to people like that. So something that's really simple and something that just requires a bare minimum level of diligence, and of course with a full round of training. And this will include how to record things and how to also come back and give it to us in a way that is that we don't break our heads trying to figure out how to process it after that. Like, so it's very set. There's a lot of planning that is required if you're going to do a general call and a general sort of rollout of things. We've done it in the past, but yeah, that is also like requires a lot of work, prior preparatory work.
Thank you. That answers my question.
I think we have time for one more question if any of the students would like to ask. Let us do. Okay. No.
That's all.
Take it,
Huh?
we can. Yeah, they're just so quiet. They're like gone.
They're just
Um,
how many of these have you had?
we do one every Monday, but last 2 weeks we didn't have.
No.
Okay.
So,
Then
no,
we've
we've
forgotten how
had
to
enough.
do this.
Yeah.
Hey, but
They
there
just.
were a lot of questions.
But no, I think then we can wrap up for the day. Vidya, as always, we appreciate this a million times, and we thank you for always saying yes to us, like you always do. And I'm sure some of them even may end up at your office, perhaps.
Who wants
So
to come? Tell me now.
there is actually one student who does. She did specify to me. She's like, can you ask when Vidya is starting, taking internship applications?
So
that
I'm receiving the applications. I mean, they're coming in, like I'm getting one every day. I'm just waiting to see. And then there's the other thing, like I don't know who's actually really willing to come. I mean, I've got 2 positions. So I mean, it would actually be useful if I knew who is really definitely going to come, and then if they can come. Because
So
most of the time it's like I go through this whole round and then they'll be like, I can't come, like, and then it's just like so frustrating because I just wasted so much time.
I I'll ask her to write to you because she lives in Oroville. So she's
Okay.
quite
She's on
keen.
call with me.
I've
Sorry?
applied today itself. Like I've applied in the afternoon.
Like open call.
That is so funny. Okay. So so did you just apply? So that's the thing, right? A lot of them just send it out and then later it's like, I can't come to Chennai.
So Rishabh, if you're certain, then write a follow-up email saying, I am certain I'll come to Chennai.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think maybe I should just put that out as a general incident. Don't write unless you're definitely like coming. But I'm two positions definitely. I'm just waiting to see because, like I said, I'm getting one application every day. So I think it starts in June, right? Like I think most of them say June till November.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
All
Pooja
right.
wanted to say something.
Yeah, actually Bhavya is on the call with me and she wanted to. Yeah.
So.
No.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Hi, I'm
Okay,
so sorry. I have good network. I've been listening to whatever you've been saying, Vidya. And I just wanted to know if you're accepting applications because I'm from Oroville and it's easy for me. If that's what you wanted to do, then I'll definitely do that. But yeah, I just wanted to ask if you're taking applications or not.
I am, yeah, and I think I just found your application here. Maybe you should just do this, like make my job easier. Okay. So yeah, I mean, if you could just help me a little bit and tell all your other classmates as well, like if they're really keen on coming, just drop me an email or whatever saying you're really interested in coming, and then we can look at. So I don't have to look through all of your applications.
Yeah, sure.
Can you please do that?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So the agenda of the meeting is met for the students. They're just
Like all sorts of other agendas also got meant.
Okay, great. So we can wrap up for the day. Thank you so much, Vidya.
Yes.
We'll keep in touch
Yes.
and we'll update you with what's happening with the learning.
Right. Actually, I should talk to both of you for. I'm just starting work on next issue for City Observer. So your article, I will have to. We'll have to figure out how you want to do your special piece.
Cool.
Yes, yes.
Great.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, take care.
All right. Bye.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.